Hello, this is News Pulse on UATV. I'm Henry Keane. Thank you for joining and welcome to the show. Today in the episode, once again over 1,000 Russian occupiers eliminated in the last 24 hours. Stay tuned for Frontline updates. Trump to impose hard sanctions. Nations doing business with Russia while Germany boosts military aid to Ukraine with extra 150 million euros. Zelenskyy to sign historic deal. France sends jets, missiles and air defense systems to Ukraine. On the front line, there were recorded 195 combat engagements for the last 24 hours, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Russian forces attacked Ukrainian defensive positions as much as 66 times in the Pokrovsk direction. Defense forces repelled 27 enemy assaults in the Konstantinovka direction and 17 in the Liman. Ukrainian defenders also fought off more than 20 enemy attacks in Oleksandrivka sector, and about 15 assault attempts were stopped in the Melitopol direction. The total losses of Russian occupational forces in dead and wounded have now exceeded 1,159,000 as of today. Of these, 1,160 were eliminated in past 24 hours alone. Russians also lost 2 tanks, 3 armored fighting vehicles, 17 artillery systems, 2 air defense systems, 1 multiple launch rocket system, more than 200 operational tactical UAVs and over 70 units of automotive equipment. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine report that near Pokrovsk, defense forces detected and neutralized enemy groups across the area as large as 26.5 square kilometers. Enemy losses amounted to 60 in personnel and 16 pieces of military equipment. Russian troops are still trying to advance in small scattered groups. With late autumn setting in, they often use fog and rain as cover, attempting to slip forward unnoticed and dig in wherever they can. Once they build up enough manpower, they then launch new attacks. And General Staff of Ukrainian Armed Forces informs that it's fully prepared for these tactics of the enemy. In Zaporizhia, Ukrainian troops are also engaged in targeted Russian troops concentrations, firing positions and rear. According to the General Staff, Russian losses in 2025 alone have already exceeded 360,000 in personnel. The Atesh guerrilla movement reports growing desertion and mounting Russian losses near Pokrovsk. According to their information, the situation for Russian assault units in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd area is deteriorating and rapidly. Cases of abandoning positions are becoming more frequent and the occupiers are facing serious problems evacuating their wounded and dead. Enemy logistics and troop rotations in the area have also slowed down significantly. Atesh also helped slow down Russian military rail convoys in the Zaporizhia sector. Guerrilla carried out a successful sabotage operation near Bogdanivka in the Melitopol district of Zaporizhia region. During the night of November 16, they set fire to a relay cabinet on a key stretch of railway. The sabotage instantly halted the movement of Russian military trains. This allowed Ukraine defense forces in train to quickly deliver precise missile and artillery strikes on the mobilized targets, the Atesh movement reported. Ukraine's defense forces control most of Kupiansk, while Russian troops in the northern parts of the city have been cut off from supply routes. This was reported by the Joint Forces Task Force. Russian units in Kupiansk have been ordered to pretend they control the city by waving Russian flags wherever small groups of the soldiers are present. Occupational forces have even begun placing flags into supply bundles dropped from drones for the scattered troops. The Joint Forces Command added that these staged flag displays are actually helping Ukrainian forces to locate and identify the small isolated Russian infantry groups spread across Kupiansk. Ukraine is expanding opportunities for foreign volunteers within the defense forces. Ukrainian ground forces have announced a new model that will allow international fighters to choose their brigade, frontline sector and even operational specialty. Command notes that the integration formats created in 2022 fulfilled their missions during the most critical phase of the country's defense, enabling rapid incorporation of foreign volunteers ready to join the fight. The core principle of the new system is to make the most effective use of foreign fighters' experience, motivation and professional skills, placing them into the units where they can deliver the greatest impact. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Marines of the 40th Separate Coastal Defense Brigade continue to intensively training to keep their skills sharp. The missions on the water are amongst the most demanding. The success of an entire operation can depend on speed, precision, and seamless teamwork. How troops prepare for such challenging conditions and what obstacles they face during real combat missions is the focus of a report by my colleague Daria Litovchenko.
Landing on shore, orienting on terrain, and securing positions. Fighters of the 40th Separate Coastal Defense Brigade of the 30th Marine Corps are practicing amphibious assault skills.
You are on occupied territory. Disembark and repel the enemy.
Every movement must be honed to automatic perfection. This is not just physical training. It's the ability to act quickly, silently, and precisely.
On the direction we operate, dynamics and speed play a huge role. We work a lot on the water, at night, in bad weather, and so on. Today, we train the guys who came after basic military training, arrived at the unit, and now we're bringing them up to speed.
Most operations are conducted under cover of darkness, yet even at night there is a constant risk of being spotted by Russian drones.
There are a lot of drones. A lot. FPV, Mavics, Zala, Supercams that film and guide. They have a very large radius. We are a priority target, as it's called in the Army, because training plus equipment costs money. On water, there's nowhere to hide. Only skill and luck.
On the water, the crew becomes an easy target, so the success of the operation largely rests on the helmsman's shoulders. This mission is carried out by a fighter with the call sign Rumun. His tasks include delivering infantry, evacuating the wounded, extracting prisoners, and delivering ammunition.
On the water, it's already the assault troops' skills, so they obey the helmsman because he is their commander on the boat, and you give orders regardless of their rank, so they cover their sectors. No one zones out, both going in and coming back. Do they obey? They obey. What else can they do? Everyone wants to live on the way back. The guys are relaxed and thinking it's over. But for us, the return trip isn't the end either. You're focused both going in and coming back.
If the boat is still spotted by the enemy, the route must be changed instantly, or the operation postponed.
The guys need to reach the other bank and take positions, so you're not detected. If you realize you've been detected, you have to change deployment locations.
Sometimes they have to operate practically blind. Rumun recalls one of the most difficult operations, evacuating a fighter who had lost contact.
The difficulty was we didn't know his exact location. We approached one point, shouted, and did not hear any answer. Turned back, and I just happened to hear his response. At that moment, he was left alone because his brothers in arms had been killed.
That's why Marine training is as close as possible to real combat conditions. Fighters rehearse every detail, from landing to reaching the line. The main thing is communication, because it plays a crucial role on the battlefield.
From my experience, when they're shooting at you, you realize you can be killed, you try to hide somewhere, panic starts, people can get lost, and then the commander's mandatory actions begin. Calm the situation, give clear instructions to save the lives of personnel.
Archie has served in the Ukrainian Army since 2014. He has experience in the anti-terrorist operation, Joint Forces operation, and the defense of Melitopol. Since 2023, he has been an instructor passing on his experience to his brothers in arms.
On land, we can maneuver and do certain things. On water, it's much harder. I mean for the infantry themselves. In non-standard situations, if someone falls out of the boat, you're no longer mobile. There is danger both there and there that threatens our lives. And this is how we train every day, teach people, improve ourselves so it's safer, and people know how to act and so on. We work, we train, we teach, and we will keep doing it with our last strength.
On the water, there is no room for error. Every Marine is prepared for conditions where seconds decide everything. Marines are trained as universal fighters, capable of performing tasks in any terrain and any weather. Reported by Daria Litovchenko, UATV News.
President Volodymyr Zelenskyy signed a historic no less agreement in France covering missiles, air defense systems and combat aircraft, Reuters reports. During his visit to Paris, he held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron as both countries prepared a 10-year strategic aviation agreement. The deal is expected to include the delivery of Rafale multi-role fighter jets to Ukraine. The two sides signed an additional agreement on supplying more SMPT air defense systems together with missiles and counter-drone technologies. Earlier, Zelenskyy announced that Ukraine and France were preparing a historic pact to strengthen Ukrainian combat aviation and protect the country's airspace. And now we see the embodiment of such a preparation. After France, Zelenskyy will travel to Spain, where the discussion will continue on further reinforcement of Ukrainians' air defense capabilities.
France and all of free Europe are with us. The United States and other countries around the world are helping us, from Canada to the nations of Asia, from Japan to the countries of Latin America. We have created one of the largest coalitions for the defense of life. Unity works, and that is precisely why we are able to shoot down Russian missiles, why we are able to stop Russian assaults on the front every day. We are restoring our energy sector. It is very hard, very difficult, but we are rebuilding everything, our infrastructure when Russia destroys it, and most importantly, we give other nations hope that Russia will not succeed in making war a new norm.
Explosions were reported yesterday evening in Russia, in Oriol. Numerous drones were reportedly heading towards the city of Oriol, according to Russian social media resources. Local reports suggest a possible strike on the Oriol thermal power plant, which could have a significant impact on the region's energy infrastructure. The plant supplies electricity to both industrial facilities and residential areas. Ukrainian defense forces have successfully targeted an oil refinery in Russia's Samara Oblast and a drone depot that belonged to the Rubicon unit of the Russian army. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the operations are aimed at reducing the enemy's offensive potential and complicating the supply of fuel and ammunition to Russian troops. The Novokuybishevsk oil refinery was targeted. Its annual processing capacity nears 9 million tons. The refinery is a major producer of jet fuel and the storage bases for Russian drones and pumping station in the temporarily occupied territory of the Donetsk Oblast were also destroyed. Meanwhile, international pressure on Russia is set to increase. US President Donald Trump announces plans for tough sanctions against any country doing business with Russia. Speaking to journalists, he confirmed that Republicans are working on legislation to intensify economic pressure on Russia through its trading partners, an idea, he says, he personally proposed. This move adds a significant economic dimension to the ongoing efforts to curb Russia's war capacity.
I hear they're doing that, and that's okay with me. They're passing legislation, or the Republicans are putting in legislation that very tough, it's sanctioning, etc., on any country doing business with Russia. They may add Iran to that, as you know. I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned.
Germany will provide an additional 150 million euros to the PURL initiative. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced at a press conference in Berlin. Under the program, NATO European countries and Canada pull around 500 million euros each month to purchase American weaponry for Ukraine. Pistorius' statements came after a summit in Berlin attended by defense officials from France, the United Kingdom, Italy and Poland. EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas was also present, and Ukraine's Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal joined via video link. At the conclusion of the meeting, participants reaffirmed their commitment to supporting Ukraine and called on Moscow to immediately cease hostilities. However, considering that the aggressor responds only to force, Kallas emphasized that frozen Russian assets should now be released in favor of Ukraine.
Ukraine will need more funding next year. There are several options, but using immobilized Russian assets is the most clear-cut way to sustain Ukraine's defense. It is also the way to show Russia that time is not on their side. Supporting Ukraine is a bargain compared to the cost of Russia's victory. Wars are lost by whoever runs out of money or soldiers first. That is why we continue to apply pressure on Russia with sanctions. Work is going on the 20th package of sanctions, and sanctions clearly work better when they are matched by our international partners. The latest US sanctions are already depriving Russia of revenues that it uses to fund its war.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said the international community has the tools to pressure Russia into ending its war against Ukraine, but a new approach is needed. He highlighted the urgent need for swift and sufficient funding for Ukraine's defense industry, which has become a global model of innovation. With proper support, Sybiha noted, Ukraine could produce up to 20 million drones next year.
Putin will have to stop this war when two factors are in place. He won't have the illusion that he can somehow eventually win on the battlefield. The price of continuing the war for him and his regime will exceed the price of stopping it. Collectively, the international community has enough capacity to force Russia to end this war. The modern arms race is not about nukes. It is about millions of cheap drones. Those who can scale up production quicker will secure peace. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on X social network.
Ukraine and Greece have signed an agreement on natural gas supplies. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced following a meeting with Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. Under the agreement, LNG will be transported from the United States and then delivered via the so-called Route 1, jointly operated by the gas transmission system operators of Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova and Ukraine. Gas deliveries from Greece to Ukraine are set to begin in January and will continue through the first quarter of 2026. Zelenskyy noted that this will be another significant step towards Ukraine's full independence from Russian energy resources in any form. Well, that seems to be it for today. I am Henry Keane. Thank you so very much for your time and standing firmly with Ukraine. Please subscribe to our channel so to stay tuned to what is happening in the world, presented to you by us, UATV, in Ukrainian perspective. Goodbye.